In the far reaches of the galaxy, a signal echoed across empty space. It was not a routine transmission, nor a diplomatic broadcast. It carried fear, desperation, and a plea for salvation. The message came from the Virel Dominion, a peaceful coalition of planets known for their advanced technology and serene culture. Their ships usually floated silently through the void, trading knowledge and resources, avoiding conflict whenever possible. But now they were in chaos. The signal crackled through the communications grid, fragmented and urgent. "Help! We are being destroyed." "The Dreknar. They consume everything. Please, anyone, answer." For centuries, the Virel had maintained a careful neutrality in galactic politics. Their fleets were capable, but their true strength lay in their diplomacy, not their weapons. But no words, no alliances, no treaties could prepare them for this. The Dreknar swarm was not like any enemy they had faced. It was a living storm, a mass of coordinated entities that devoured worlds as if they were nothing more than dust in space. Entire colonies vanished in moments. Nothing, it seemed, could stop it. The Virel fleet commanders scanned the stars for help. They sent the distress signal out through every known channel. They reached out to the Cathar League, the Soren clans, and even the secretive Tarn Collective. All refused. Fear was universal. Even mercenaries who traded their swords for profit fled at the mention of the Dreknar swarm. The Virel felt hopelessness begin to settle over them like a thick fog. Their worlds, home to billions, would not survive. And yet amid the despair a response came. It was brief, clear, cold. Message received. Help is coming. The transmission came from the Sol system. The Virel operators blinked at the readout, confused. They had expected a faint, broken reply from some far-off colony or hidden fleet. But Sul, that was a name from ancient records, a star system thought to have been abandoned for hundreds of years. The Virel elders convened a meeting aboard the Doran Star Council, a massive command ship orbiting their capital world. Every representative was present, their faces etched with worry and disbelief. "Are we misreading this?" asked Ambassador Lyran, a tall Virel with silver-blue skin that shimmered faintly in the council lights. "Sul has been empty since the Silent Wars. Humanity was destroyed. We have records, histories, ships, survivors' testimonies. There is no one left." "And yet," said Commander Halric, voice low and tense, "the signal came from Sol. The language, the structure, the timestamps, it is human. But that cannot be. We've searched and nothing remains." The council fell silent. In the vastness of space, silence carried a weight heavier than any weapon. All eyes turned to the communications console. Again, the transmission repeated, not in words but in tone. A deep, steady rhythm that spoke of precision, power, and patience. "Help is coming." The words hung in the air. There was no plea, no fear, no hesitation. It was a statement, a promise. The Virel, who had lived for millennia in a galaxy where diplomacy and caution were the law of survival, felt something unfamiliar, awe, and fear. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Sol system, hidden behind layers of orbiting debris and cloaked in technology long forgotten by the rest of the galaxy, humanity waited. They had waited for centuries. For generations, the Terran vanguard had remained hidden. Their cities were gone, destroyed in the wars that had nearly erased them. Their fleets had been scattered, their colonies abandoned. Yet humanity survived, because survival was written in their blood. Even when the galaxy had labeled them extinct, they endured. On the largest orbital station, Admiral Helen O'Rourke walked through the corridor, her boots echoing on polished steel. Around her, officers prepared ships, weapons, and systems that had not been active in centuries. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with quiet determination. "They called for help," she said, her voice steady, carrying through the room's intercom. "And we will answer. But we will answer on our terms." The younger officers exchanged nervous glances. They had heard the old stories of humanity's wars, the stories of ships that could level continents, of pilots who could predict enemy movements before they even happened, of soldiers who fought like storms incarnate. But these were just stories, myths from a forgotten age. Now they were real. The first ships began to emerge from their long slumber, dark, sleek, angular vessels, their hulls black with lines of glowing energy. Each carried weapons that the galaxy had never seen in use. Drones scuttled across hangars, readying themselves for combat. Orbital cannons rotated into place, their barrels gleaming as they powered up. The humans had waited for this moment, and they were prepared. Back in the Viral fleet, the first human ship appeared on the long-range scanners. The signal was unmistakable. Its size alone dwarfed the Viral capital ships. Its presence sent a shiver through the council chambers. "That cannot be," whispered Ambassador Lyran. "It is a single vessel, yet it carries the power of hundreds of fleets." "It is not a single vessel," said Commander Halric. "It is the beginning of an entire fleet. Humanity has returned. For the first time in decades, hope stirred in the hearts of the Viral. They realized that the answer to their desperate plea was not coming from cautious diplomats, mercenaries, or timid traders. It was coming from the most lethal species in the galaxy, the very beings everyone had assumed extinct. As the human ships began to organize in formation, a calm, authoritative voice came over the communications array. "State your situation," said Admiral Rourke. "Describe the threat and provide coordinates. We will intervene, no more, no less." The Viral ambassador, trembling but resolute, transmitted everything he knew about the Dreknar swarm, their numbers, their tactics, their unstoppable hunger. The humans listened, unflinching. There was no fear, only strategy. No hesitation, only calculation. The Viral could hardly comprehend it. These humans, long thought gone, were not here to negotiate, nor to beg, nor to bargain. They were here to fight, and they would fight with precision, planning, and a willingness to risk everything. As the transmissions ended, the first human vessels slipped past the outer edges of the Sol system, cloaked and ready. The engines glowed faintly, a promise of power restrained only by discipline. The Viral watched silent and awestruck, as the shadows of long-forgotten legends began to stir in the void. In the galaxy beyond, the Dreknar swarm continued its relentless advance, unaware that a force far deadlier than anything it had encountered was awakening, a species that had survived when others thought it extinct, a species that had endured centuries of isolation, training, and preparation for this very moment. Humanity was returning to the stars, and the galaxy would never forget it. The Viral fleet had followed the human transmissions to the edges of the Sol system. They expected ruins. They expected silence. They expected only shadows of a species thought extinct. Instead, what greeted them was a spectacle that no history could have prepared them for. At the heart of the system, orbiting a pale yellow star, massive warships floated like dark monoliths. Their black hulls glimmered with energy lines that pulsed like the heartbeat of some giant creature. Orbital platforms, long abandoned, now shone with activity as drones moved with precision unseen by any modern species. Every sensor reading showed power, organization, and lethal intent. The Viral's fleet commander Halric could barely contain his astonishment. This is impossible," he muttered. "They cannot have survived. Not like this, not for centuries." Yet the communications console confirmed it. Every reading, every pulse, every signal originated from these humans. And then the voice came again, calm, commanding, cold. "Identify yourselves and state your purpose," said Admiral Helena Rourke. It was the same voice from before, precise, unwavering like a steel blade cutting through space. The Viral ambassador, Lyran, felt his throat tighten. He had spent years in diplomacy, negotiating peace treaties and mediating conflicts. But this was not diplomacy. This was something far older, far more dangerous. "I am Ambassador Lyran of the Viral Dominion," he began, trying to steady his voice. "We come in desperation. Our people are being consumed by the Dreknar swarm, entire worlds destroyed. Our fleets crushed. We beg for your help." There was silence on the other end. The calm rhythm of human speech had paused only briefly, and when it returned it was deliberate, measured, and unshakable. "Explain the threat. Provide coordinates. Do not embellish. We will assess and decide." Lyran's hands trembled slightly as he relayed everything he knew. The size of the swarm fleets, their tactics, the speed of their attacks, and the areas already devastated. As he spoke, he noticed the Viral crew around him watching in awe. No human had spoken a word of reassurance or comfort. They simply listened as if the facts themselves were enough to dictate action. When the message ended, the humans responded with a single phrase. "We will intervene. Prepare your fleets. You will follow our lead." It was not a promise. It was a command. On the surface of Luna Base, a massive underground complex beneath what had once been the moon's surface, preparations were underway. Centuries-old hangars that had been sealed and forgotten slowly came to life. Massive doors hissed open, revealing ships that were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Angular, black, and vast, they seemed almost alive. Energy conduits pulsed along their surfaces, drones scuttled with silent efficiency, and automated repair systems roared to life. Admiral Rourke moved through the corridor, her boots echoing on the metal floor. Around her, younger officers adjusted systems, tested sensors, and calibrated weapons. They moved with quiet intensity, as though each action carried the weight of centuries. "All systems check?" Rourke asked, her voice calm. "All systems nominal, Admiral," replied Lieutenant Carver, a young officer with bright eyes but steady hands. "Weapons are online. Drones operational. Fleet readiness at 98%. "Good," Rourke said, her gaze scanning the room. "We have waited for this moment. We will not fail. We cannot fail." Back in the Virel fleet, sensors tracked every human vessel. The fleet commanders whispered among themselves, unable to hide their shock. These ships were centuries ahead of any known technology, yet they operated with the precision of beings who had mastered war long ago. Each ship was a weapon, but each was also coordinated in a way that suggested intelligence far beyond mechanical AI, an instinctive understanding of combat and strategy. "Are they alive?" muttered one Virel officer, staring at the monitor. "No," Halric replied grimly. "They are something more." It was a thought that chilled them. Humans, thought extinct, had survived wars that had destroyed entire civilizations. They had hidden, grown, and now they returned, not as diplomats, not as traitors, not as observers, but as the ultimate force. As the Virel fleet moved closer to the human formation, a massive ship detached from the main human fleet. It was enormous, dwarfing the Virel command ship, its surface etched with faint, glowing inscriptions in an ancient human script. Sensors detected weapons of incredible range and destructive power, far beyond anything the Virel could imagine. "That is, a single ship?" whispered Ambassador Lyran. "How can one vessel carry such firepower?" "It is not a single ship," said Halric, voice low. "It is the first of many. Humanity never fights alone. They fight in systems, fleets, and centuries of preparation. This is their way." Admiral Rourke's voice came again over the universal comm channel, firm and unyielding. "Prepare your fleets. We will lead. Follow our guidance. Your lives depend on adherence." The Virel watched in awe as the human vessels began moving. Their engines glowed with a soft, ominous light, and their formations shifted with almost organic precision. Every ship knew its place, its purpose, and its target. The younger Virel officers whispered to one another, realizing that these humans were not merely ships, they were a living strategy. In the human command center, Rourke studied the galaxy maps, plotting the Dreknar swarm's trajectory. Data flowed in constantly from sensors, long-range scans, and historical records. The humans had fought the swarm before. They remembered the terror it brought, the destruction it caused, and they had trained for this exact moment. Probability of swarm containment without intervention, 0.02%, said Archon, the fleet AI, its voice calm but unyielding. "Then we act," Rourke said. "We give them one chance and only one. Prepare strike teams and defensive formations. The galaxy will see humanity as it always was, and as it always should be feared." Around her, officers nodded silently. There was no panic. There was no hesitation. Every hand moved with precision. Every system hummed to life. Centuries of waiting, centuries of preparation had brought them to this moment. Humanity had returned, and they were not here to negotiate. They were here to fight and win. The Virel watched as the humans made their final preparations. Smaller escort ships emerged. Drones flitted along the hulls of the massive warships, and orbital defenses rotated into position. Energy fields shimmered in the distance, invisible to the naked eye, but clearly detectable by sensors. "They are ready," whispered Lyran. "All of them. They are ready to face the swarm, and yet they do not flinch. They do not hesitate." "This is why they survived," Halric said quietly. "This is why humanity was never truly gone. They were waiting for the galaxy to call on them, and now it has." As the human fleet moved into position, The first signals from the Dreknar swarm appeared on long-range sensors. Dark, writhing shapes, countless in number, advancing toward the outer colonies of the Virel. The swarm had never encountered resistance like this. It had never met humans, the species thought extinct, the species that had once defended Earth itself against a similar threat. "Engage when ready," Rourke commanded. Her voice was calm, but every word carried the weight of centuries. "We do not negotiate, we do not retreat, we strike, and we strike to win." The Virel fleet, trembling but inspired, prepared to follow the humans. For the first time, hope entered their hearts. Not hope born of diplomacy or alliance, but hope born of something far older and more terrifying: the sheer determination of humanity. As the stars in the distance shimmered, the Terran vanguard prepared to move. The galaxy, long accustomed to fear and caution, would soon witness the return of the most lethal beings it had ever known, and the swarm would learn that even in the deepest void, some species are never to be underestimated. The humans had awakened, and the battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The human fleet moved through the darkness of space like a silent storm. Their ships, black as obsidian, glided without a sound. Each vessel carried power older than most civilizations in the galaxy. For the Virel, watching from their own command ships, it was like witnessing a myth come alive. Ambassador Lyran stood at the viewing deck of the Doran Star, his eyes wide as he watched the Terran vanguard fleet align itself into perfect formation. There was no disorder, no hesitation. Every human ship moved as though guided by one single mind. The discipline was beyond anything the Virel had ever seen. "How can they move so perfectly?" whispered one of Lyran's aides. "Because they have done this before," Lyran replied softly. "They have fought wars none of us could imagine." Across the human fleet, deep beneath the surface of Luna Base, enormous hangars roared to life. Dust and silence that had settled for centuries were swept away as lights blazed through forgotten corridors. Gigantic steel doors opened, revealing rows of ancient war machines, humanity's sleeping giants. Inside one hangar stood Titan-class carriers, each capable of launching thousands of drones and strike fighters. Nearby, colony warships designed to survive entire planetary bombardments activated their reactors. Robotic arms moved with mechanical grace, attaching new armor plating, calibrating weapons, and filling energy cores with glowing plasma. Everywhere, the words glowed on metal surfaces and digital screens. "For Earth, for all." Admiral Helena Rourke stood in the command center of the flagship TNS Nemesis, her gaze fixed on the vast holographic display of the fleet. Around her, officers worked in silence, their faces illuminated by soft blue light. The fleet AI Archon hovered above the table, its voice calm and emotionless. "All vessels report combat readiness at 99.6%, Archon stated. "Good," Rourke replied. "Begin Phase 1 activation. Let the galaxy see that humanity remembers." Across Luna Base, hidden defense satellites powered on, ancient codes unlocked after centuries of silence. Dozens of long-dormant weapon platforms blinked to life in Earth's orbit. The planet that the galaxy thought dead suddenly glowed again with energy and purpose. For the Virel, observing from orbit, it was like watching an entire world wake up from a long sleep. Commander Halric could not take his eyes off the human fleet. "They never disappeared," he said in disbelief. "They were preparing. All this time they were preparing for war." "But why hide for so long?" Lyran asked, still stunned. "Because they knew the galaxy would call for them again," Halric replied, "and they wanted to be ready when that day came." The Terran Vanguard fleet began its departure. Each warship ignited its engines with a blinding flash of blue light. The darkness of space was illuminated as the fleet began to move, silent, deliberate, unstoppable. Human communications filled the Virel channels. The words were few, the tone professional. Every order carried calm certainty. "All squadrons synchronize. Activate stealth protocols. Do not fire until ordered." The precision was frightening. There was no shouting, no confusion, no delay. The Virel realized that humanity did not fight with passion alone. They fought with cold, unbreakable control. As the fleet prepared for warp, Archon's voice filled every command deck. Dreknar fleet trajectory calculated. Probability of total survival, 23%. Proceeding anyway. Rourke nodded without hesitation. "Humanity has faced worse odds. Execute the jump." A ripple of light spread across the Terran fleet. One by one, the warships vanished into the void, leaving streaks of blue light behind. The Virel followed, though with slower and smaller ships. Their hearts pounded. They did not fully understand the humans, but they trusted them. Far across the stars in the GalacticPrime system, the Dreknar swarm moved. It was not a single fleet, but millions of organic ships, living, breathing horrors that consumed everything in their path. They surrounded GalacticPrime, tearing cities from its surface, drawing energy from its molten core. The planet screamed in silence as it died, but then something changed. The swarm felt something it had not felt for millennia: fear. Sensors across the system detected distortions in space. At first, the swarm ignored them, but then bright flashes appeared in the void, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. The Terran vanguard arrived. The first human ship to emerge was the TNS Nemesis, its hull reflecting the light of the dying planet below. It was followed by entire squadrons of carriers, cruisers, and drones. Their formation was precise, perfect, and ready for war. "All units target Dreknar cores," Rourke ordered calmly. No hesitation. "Show them the strength of humankind." Her voice carried across every ship, calm yet commanding. The crews responded instantly. And then, humanity struck. Space erupted into light and fury. Beams of pure plasma sliced through the void. Missiles, faster than sound, shattered living ships into fragments. Human drones swarmed forward, attacking with machine precision. For every Dreknar ship that fell, 3 more emerged. But the humans did not slow. The Virel fleet, arriving moments later, could only watch in awe. The humans fought like they were part of one enormous organism, every move perfectly coordinated. Where one ship faltered, another stepped in. Where a gap formed, drones filled it. Commander Halric whispered almost reverently, "They fight as if death means nothing to them." Admiral Rourke's voice echoed again through the comms. "Hold the line. No retreat. Humanity stands." The Nemesis unleashed a wave of kinetic cannons, sending massive projectiles into the swarm's heart. The impact tore through hundreds of Dreknar ships. The galaxy had never seen such destructive power used with such precision. For hours the battle raged. The humans fought relentlessly. When their drones were destroyed, new ones replaced them in seconds. Their ships coordinated through Archon, predicting the swarm's movements before they even happened. It was as if the humans could see into the future. But the cost was high. Several human ships were lost. Entire squadrons sacrificed themselves to protect the Virel or to hold strategic positions. Yet even as they fell, they transmitted calmly, "Mission complete. Area secured. Continue the fight. Humanity endures." There was no panic, no despair, only resolve. Finally, after endless hours of battle, the swarm began to retreat. It had never done so before. The hive mind pulsed with confusion and anger, but it could not deny what it felt. The humans had inflicted pain, real pain. The Virel could hardly believe what they were witnessing. "They are retreating," shouted one of Halric's officers. "The swarm. It's leaving." Admiral Rourke watched the swarm vanish into the dark, then slowly turned toward her bridge crew. "Record everything. Send the data to the Virel Dominion. The first battle is done. But this war is far from over." Archon's voice replied, "Casualty rate 42%. Enemy losses 81%. Tactical victory confirmed," Rourke nodded. "And the cost?" "Acceptable," the AI answered. Rourke stared out into the void, her eyes reflecting the light of dying stars. "There are no acceptable losses," she said quietly, "but we will bear them as we always have." When the smoke of battle cleared, the Virel ships approached the human fleet. Some of the smaller human vessels were badly damaged, but they remained operational. Even broken, they stood strong. Ambassador Lyran sent a transmission, his voice filled with awe. "On behalf of the Virel Dominion, I thank you. Without you, we would have fallen." Rourke's reply came after a brief pause. "Do not thank us yet. The swarm will return, and when it does, we will face it together. Until then, prepare your people. Humanity will not fight this war alone." The transmission ended, but the meaning was clear. Humanity had returned to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as protectors. Deadly protectors. The Virel looked toward the human fleet one last time before returning home. Every ship, every light, every movement spoke of silent power, a power that had been sleeping for centuries, waiting for this very moment. In the darkness of space, The Terran vanguard stood victorious, and somewhere deep within the Dreknar hive, the swarm mind whispered a single thought, a thought filled with the first emotion it had ever known: fear. The Dreknar swarm had retreated, but the galaxy knew better than to think it was gone. Deep in the darkness beyond GalacticPrime, the living storm pulsed and reorganized. Thousands of ships, countless tentacle-like extensions and organic structures shifted in unison. Its hive mind seethed with anger, planning vengeance, remembering the humans who had dared to strike it down. In orbit around GalacticPrime, the Terran vanguard prepared for the final phase. The planet below was scarred by battle, but it stood. Humanity had proven its power, but Admiral Helena Rourke knew this was not the end. The swarm would return stronger, hungrier, and more determined than ever. Rourke stood on the bridge of her flagship, the TNS Nemesis, eyes fixed on the dark void beyond the planet. The bridge was quiet, save for the soft hum of the ship's energy cores. Around her, officers moved efficiently, checking systems and coordinating the fleet. "Admiral," Commander Elias Trent said, approaching her, "we've held GalacticPrime. The swarm is retreating, but the galaxy expects more. What's our next step?" Rourke's gaze did not leave the stars. "We end this," she said softly. "Now, while we still can, Operation Final Dawn begins tonight." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Operation Final Dawn was not a strategy of caution. It was a plan that relied on everything humanity had: their skill, their technology, and their willingness to risk everything. In the deep labs beneath Luna Base, human scientists worked tirelessly. Using captured Dreknar DNA and organic technology, they developed a virus-like code designed to disrupt the swarm's hive mind. It was dangerous, experimental, and could not fail. If the delivery failed, entire human fleets could be destroyed. Rourke entered the lab, her presence commanding silence. "Status report," she demanded. Lead scientist Dr. Mara Leto spoke, her hands steady despite exhaustion. "The code is ready. It has been optimized for hive-level infiltration. The Nemesis will deliver it to the heart of the swarm. The launch window opens in 6 hours." Rourke nodded. "Good. Prepare the strike teams. I will lead the mission myself." Her officers were stunned. "Admiral, it's too dangerous." "If the Nemesis is destroyed," Rourke interrupted calmly, "if we hesitate now, billions die. Humanity stands not just for itself, but for all who cannot fight. We do this. We go and we do it together." The officers bowed their heads. They understood. Humanity had always fought this way: calm, disciplined, and willing to bear any cost. As night fell across GalacticPrime, the Terran vanguard fleet prepared for the jump into the swarm's territory. Each ship was armed to the brim. Drones buzzed in readiness. The massive warships glimmered under the planet's soft light, a silent promise of power restrained only by discipline. Rourke stood on the observation deck of the Nemesis. Her crew moved with precision around her. Every officer knew their role. Every pilot knew their objective. No one hesitated. "Archon," Rourke said, her voice quiet but firm. "Engage full stealth. Prepare warp trajectory for the swarm's heart world." The AI responded, emotionless yet weighty. "Trajectory calculated. Probability of success 16%. Proceeding anyway." Rourke smiled faintly. "Then let's make history." The jump through space was silent and swift. One moment the fleet orbited GalacticPrime. The next they were at the outer edge of the swarm's core territory. Organic structures the size of cities floated in the void, pulsating and moving as if alive. Massive Dreknar ships patrolled the edges, sensing movement, always alert. Rourke gave the order: launch the strike pods. Deploy the code. No hesitation, no retreat. Humanity stands. Small pods, each carrying the viral code, streaked silently through the void. Fighter escorts cleared paths, cutting through swarm ships with plasma lances and explosive drones. The battle was precise, deadly, and terrifying. The Dreknar were powerful, but humans were relentless. Rourke's flagship moved at the heart of the storm. The Nemesis's shields shimmered as tentacle-like swarm ships struck against them, but the human ship held steady. Every weapon, every drone, every strike was executed with unflinching precision. Inside the swarm's heart world, the hive mind detected the intruders. Confusion rippled through its network. The virus pods infiltrated the largest living structures, moving deeper into the hive mind's central nodes. "Admiral," Archon reported. "Primary hive node reached. Code delivery in progress. Estimated integration 90% in 5 minutes." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "Protect the pods." "Nothing stops this," the swarm responded with desperate fury. Entire waves of ships rushed forward, attempting to crush the humans. The Vanguard's fleet fought back with everything they had. Drones, fighter squadrons, plasma lances, kinetic bombs, all were deployed in perfect coordination. Outside, the battle was a dance of death. Lights and explosions flashed across the void as ships collided, twisted, and disintegrated. Yet the humans remained focused. They had trained for centuries. They had waited for this moment. As the code integrated into the hive, the swarm convulsed. The living ship shuddered as the viral program spread through the organic network. Communication lines within the swarm broke. Control signals faltered. Confusion spread like wildfire. Rourke watched the monitors closely. "Now," she said. With a single coordinated strike, the Nemesis and accompanying ships fired every remaining weapon at the central hive. The blast tore through the core, a wave of destruction that illuminated the void. The swarm shrieked in collective pain, a sound no human had ever heard before. And then, silence. The hive had collapsed. Its network shattered. The Dreknar were no more. The price was high. Human ships had fallen. Fighters were gone. Entire squadrons were erased in the final assault. Yet the mission succeeded. Life in the galaxy was safe, and GalacticPrime would survive. Rourke stood on the Nemesis bridge, looking at the stars where the swarm had vanished. She knew the cost would be remembered. Humanity had fought not for power, not for conquest, but for survival, and for every being that could not defend itself. The surviving Virel sent messages of gratitude. "You saved our people. You saved the galaxy," Rourke responded quietly. "We did what we had to. Humanity does not ask for thanks. We fight because we must." The fleet returned to orbit around GalacticPrime. Human ships were battered and broken, but they flew with dignity. Each surviving officer and pilot knew the cost, but also the meaning. Humanity had shown the galaxy why it had always been feared, and why it had never truly been gone. On the planet below, Virel and other species began rebuilding. They remembered the human sacrifice. They remembered the courage, precision, and relentlessness that had saved their worlds. In the void, stars shimmered quietly. The galaxy had learned a new truth. When the most lethal beings rise to defend the weak, nothing can stop them. Rourke watched the horizon from her flagship's observation deck. Her voice was calm but firm. "Humanity has returned. We will protect what we can. We will endure. And if the galaxy forgets our strength, it will remember it again. We will always answer the call." The galaxy would never be the same. Even in death, even in loss, humanity had won. They had faced the darkness, stared into oblivion, and emerged victorious. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter in acknowledgement. And somewhere in the void, the whispers of the Dreknar lingered, fear, memory, and the realization that the humans were not to be underestimated. They had begged for help. And the universe's most lethal, relentless, and self-sacrificing beings answered. The galaxy was vast, older than anyone could measure. Stars burned in spirals. Black holes waited silently, and countless species had risen and fallen in the endless cosmic dance. Among the species that had reached the stars, the Galactic Council kept records of every civilization's rise, their discoveries, their histories. It was a record older than most stars themselves, and the Council believed it contained every important life form that had ever achieved space travel. Then came the signal. A small, blue planet on the edge of a spiral arm, nearly unnoticed, had sent its first faint radio signals into space. The Council's exploration drones picked up music, simple news broadcasts, laughter, and the hum of life, and cataloged it as Earth. At first, it seemed no more important than any other young planet. The Council assumed that in 1,000 or 10,000 years, the planet's species might reach space. Until then, it was a curiosity, harmless and small. That was the first mistake. When the first alien survey team arrived in the Sol system, their advanced instruments went haywire. Their scanners, designed to detect and measure civilizations light years away, could not understand what they found. The human species on the surface appeared young and primitive. They were still learning to build space stations and satellites. Yet the sensors detected something below the planet's surface, something impossible. The readings showed structures older than any known civilization, buried beneath kilometers of rock and ocean. Energy patterns pulsed faintly, as if the planet itself was alive with hidden memory. Commander Vrel of the Thalan Science Directorate was the first to land a research vessel on the planet. Vrel's species had long been explorers, mapping new worlds and seeking knowledge, but nothing in all their training prepared them for this. The first scans revealed enormous chambers beneath the Pacific Ocean. The structures were made of materials that defied known physics. They were smooth, black, and reflective, yet nearly indestructible. Inside, the sensors detected a pattern that looked almost like life. Vrel frowned. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered to his aide. "This should not exist. This is older than the oldest civilizations in our archives, and yet it's alive." They launched drones into the deepest chamber. The first images shocked the team. Rows upon rows of what appeared to be cryogenic pods filled the enormous halls. Each pod held a human, perfectly preserved, pristine, calm, as if asleep. Vrel's heart raced. They were looking at humans, but not like the humans on the surface. These were older somehow, older than memory, older than history, older than the Council's knowledge of life itself. When Vrel transmitted the findings back to the Galactic Council, the reaction was immediate: alarm. Panic spread across the Council chambers. Every ancient species and recorded civilization paled in comparison. Humans were not supposed to be here yet. They were not supposed to exist before the youngest stars. "The archives must be wrong," said a delegate from the Alari species. Their voice trembled. "Humans cannot be older than the stars, that is impossible." The Council ordered an immediate halt to all surface activity. They sent a diplomatic message to Earth. "We request full communication. Explain your existence. Explain these structures." And the Earth did not respond. Vrel felt a shiver run down his spine. This planet, so small, so young in galactic terms, was hiding something enormous, and the Council's oldest historians had no idea what. The team returned to the surface to observe human life. What they saw was ordinary. Cities, vehicles, children laughing, news broadcasts, farmers tending crops, people going about their daily lives. Humans were still learning, still young, still playful, yet beneath their feet lay the hidden truth. A civilization older than most of the galaxy's known stars. That night, as the Thalan team studied the data, Vrel sat in the observation deck, staring at Earth. The blue oceans glimmered like scattered gems. Clouds drifted lazily across continents. Mountains rose proudly, and all the while the planet seemed to pulse faintly, as if it was breathing, alive with secrets. "I don't understand it," Vrel whispered. "They are the same species. And yet they are not. They are so young, and yet—" He trailed off, staring at the energy readings. They were active, but dormant. Waiting. The next morning, the drones detected a new signal. It was weak, coming from the deep ocean structure. It was not like anything the sensors had recorded before. A pattern emerged, a simple repeating pulse. As the AI tried to analyze it, it produced an error. The signal was too complex, too layered, and within it, almost like a whisper, Vrel thought he heard words. "Do not disturb the sleepers." The words sent chills down every Thalan spine. They could not understand the language, but the warning was clear. And yet human curiosity, even in its primitive form, had already begun to stir. Humans were explorers by nature. They had touched the stars, built satellites, mapped planets. What would happen when they discovered the truth of themselves? Vrel knew one thing. The galaxy had made a grave mistake. They had assumed humans were young, unimportant, and harmless. But they were wrong. Very wrong. That evening, a solar flare passed over the planet, hitting the vault beneath the Pacific. The sensors recorded a surge of energy. The power systems in the pods flickered. A single cryogenic pod opened. Inside lay a woman. Her eyes blinked slowly. Her gaze was sharp, clear, and ancient. She looked around at the humans on the surface, and then at the Thalan observing her from above. For a moment, no one moved. She simply sat up slowly and said a single word, perfectly clear despite the ancient dialect. Finally, the Thalan scientists could not translate the meaning. Yet the weight of it pressed on their minds. This human was not the same as those on the surface. She carried knowledge of stars older than anyone had recorded. Commander Vrel sent an urgent report to the Council. The message was short. The humans are not young. They are older than the stars. They have been here before. They have waited, and something has awakened them. The Council did not know what to do. They debated, argued, and feared. Yet Earth continued as it always had, and blue, beautiful, and seemingly innocent. But beneath the surface, secrets older than the oldest civilization stirred, awakening slowly from millions of years of sleep. And far across the spiral arm, distant sensors detected something unusual, something moving between stars large and dark, an anomaly older than the Council itself. It had not noticed Earth yet, but when it did, the galaxy would see that this young planet was anything but. Commander Vrel looked out once more. He thought of the humans on the surface, playing, laughing, living ordinary lives. They did not know who they truly were. They did not know their history. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. To the galaxy, Earth was young. But humanity was older than the stars.